So welcome back to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. And I'm so excited to be sharing with you the summer guest series this summer. And today I have a beautiful guest, Chris Wasko, who's here to tell us about her story and how she helps. So, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Angie. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so I would love for you to share with our listeners what what was your journey? What led you here to reaching out to me and being on the podcast?
I'll reverse engineer that a bit. I do work a lot, with kids and especially teenagers. It's not my primary work, but I really love your focus on parenting and just really helping from a healing level. And what ultimately led me to this in my journey was. I had made a really difficult decision in my life to cut off my extremely narcissistic parents. And while it was the most difficult decision in my life, it absolutely changed my life for the better. It allowed me to heal. It allowed me to calm my nervous system. It allowed me to really unpack the layers of trauma and abuse and what it had done to my body, to really make myself aware of my trauma responses and how they were affecting my day-to-day life. And in this healing journey that I didn't even know I was embarking on because I was just trying to feel better. I was so scared of what they might do to me because I was not talking to them anymore, as I was just healing on so many different levels. But it ultimately had opened me up to spirit. I would be having a conversation with people as I am you, and I would see someone behind them in my mind's eye. And I had no idea what they wanted to say or what they were even doing there, but my healing led me to this completely other side of living, really, and just led me on this spiritual awakening journey. And that's where now you're finding me with you.
Yeah. Oh, that's what a courageous decision to recognize that your body needed something different than what was happening and to make a courageous decision to take care of you first.
I
Um
wish I could call it courageous. It was just more, it was safety. My dad's a very volatile, violent person, and that risk was now going beyond me and threatening my children and my husband. And I finally said enough.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I call it courageous because I think so many people stay. They
Oh,
stay
yeah.
in
I did. I did.
yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I did. My dad actually first hit my first child, and that should have been my time to leave. And I chose to forgive and to try and move on. And it was another 8 years when he threatened to hit my husband, and I said, no, no more. I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. What a gift that you gave to your kids to show them that they have the power to change the trajectory of their life too. And I think like thinking about like how this ties to what I'm here to help families with on this podcast is that oftentimes when we're raising our kids who have behavior struggles, we get stuck in this loop. We get stuck in the loop of parenting the way we were parented or how we think social media is supposed to tell us how to do it. And even when it's not working, we just keep doing the same old ridiculous thing over and over again because our brain sees our pattern as more comfortable even when the pattern is awful.
You're right.
I'm curious how, like you stepping into your own alignment, how have you seen that play out for you as a parent and how you show up differently or not with your kids?
It was parenting that I think helped me wake up in a lot of ways. Even before I cut off my parents, I was noticing a lot of the toxic elements that were in my own upbringing, and I was recognizing a need for change. And at the in the beginning, I didn't recognize it. It caused a little bit of tunnel vision as well. We become hyper focused on the trauma of our upbringing. So for me, I was hit so much. I made a promise to myself I was not going to hit my children, and I didn't realize there were other aspects involved as well that I needed to work on. And cutting them off really allowed me to do that, and it made me reflective in ways that I needed to really be able to look in the mirror. Who am I? Who am I as a parent? Who am I as a wife? And who do I want to be? And, I knew at the time my kids deserve better from me. And as long as I took the steps each day to do better and to be better, I was able to give myself grace through the process.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful and uh such a great testament that it when we want to change those generational patterns, it takes a decision, right? It takes deciding that what's happening isn't serving us anymore, isn't working anymore, and doing something different. Um, Once you made that decision, which I'm sure was so much more complex than just one day you woke up and you're like, okay, decision made. um, but once you made that decision, what kinds of roadblocks did you hit along the way when it came to parenting, breaking those old patterns? What kinds of things did you find challenging?
That's such a good question because I think one of the challenges was just this feeling that my children needed their grandparents, that that was something that they should have. And I really had to go into what did my grandparents mean to me? Why did I hold that relationship on such a pedestal that feel my children need it for themselves? And what I recognized when I really climbed into that is my grandparents were an element of safety for me. I recognized that my father never hit me in front of his parents.
Mm,
So that does something to a child on a deeper level is like, oh, my grandparents are safe. So
yeah,
I connected the identity of grandparents to safety, and that therefore my children needed that too. But I'm their safety. And it was really eye-opening for me to recognize that. And it was important for me because I think I put so much weight on that. And I was raised to really value family. I had a religious upbringing. So, not honoring your mother and father, and having a relationship with them, regardless of how you're treated, I was breaking commandments as far as that was concerned. And so it was unpacking those elements too, the religious control aspects that I wasn't any really identifying with anymore. But again, these are foundational elements that I was raised with. So really seeing the kind of parent I wanted to be through this, I felt like myself just really understanding and awakening to so much more within me.
yeah. Um, yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. Um, I wonder, were there any tools that you used to help you as you went through this journey of really releasing old relationships and building new ones?
Yeah, the first thing I felt really helped me was tapping. Yeah, so if you're familiar, I'm
Yeah.
sure EFT, emotional freedom technique, for anyone who might not be aware, but it really helped calm my nervous system from a lot of the fear elements that I was dealing with at the time. And I was committed. I did it every day just to help my body feel safe, help regulate my nervous system and just really change me on a cellular level. And it did. Affirmations were very helpful at the time too. I would just put on a recording and, go in the shower and just repeat it or, cook and repeat it. And it became part of my routine. At the time, I remember when I was first doing these things, I felt a little ridiculous. I'll be the first to admit that. But over time, I saw results. And as I continued to see results. These were those elements that really helped change my life in so many ways.
Yeah. That I appreciate you saying how ridiculous it looks. I do also use tapping with my clients, and I host a weekly tapping workshop at a addictions recovery facility. So it's this huge room with anywhere from 50 to 60 people in there. And some of them look at me like I have an elephant sitting on my head as I'm showing them tapping. And so I've started to say when I go there, I say, like, this probably looks ridiculous. And it probably doesn't match anything else you're doing in your daily life. But if you want to break that cycle of what's been happening in your life, you're probably going to have to do something ridiculous or do something you've never done before. And so I appreciate you saying that it probably felt a little silly or ridiculous. I find that myself too. as I've been doing this interpersonal work and tapping into me, some of the things that I do, I think the people, even in my closest family, are like, they get into my car and they're like, wait, you're not listening to rock music anymore? What is this spa music on your radio? And I'm like, sometimes I just need peace. Sometimes I just need calm. And they're like, that's not you. And I'm like, actually, it kind of is
Yes.
me, but I was living this like we all, right? We live this life of who we think we're supposed to be to keep everybody else happy, keep the peace.
Yes.
So,
Until one day we then decide, I want to find out who I really am.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, but I can't remember if I asked you before, but do you use human design at all in your inner work?
I do not. While I appreciate it and have connected to it on some level and can, have read mine and say, yeah, I could see that, but I just haven't used it in my own work. So I connect more with the things I'm just using
Yeah.
regularly, but I do think it's wonderful.
Yeah, no, no judgment at all. I know it's some people have like they've had a reading or they've pulled their chart and they understand on a very basic level and they have that kind of same response, like, oh, that was nice. But it takes that level of commitment, like you used with EFT, to you can't just understand your human design on a surface level. It doesn't create that same kind of change. And I think that's the same with any of these tools, right? You can't just
Absolutely.
say like, well, I
Yeah.
tried tapping a couple times and nothing changed. Well, of course.
And I think like anything like astrology, numerology, we can pull these things on ourselves and, really climb into it or not. These are elements we could study for a lifetime and still not know everything there is to know. So I love that there's so many different avenues to really explore and, for us to have these different paths of self-discovery is great.
Yeah, yeah. So and you can pass on this question. I told you when we were interviewing that I have no plan. I just based on what you bring up,
Okay.
but I'm so curious, I so much of the work that I do with clients is, like I said, helping parents who are raising kids who have a tricky past. And I first started by helping adoptive parents because that is near and dear to my heart and my own experiences with my son. But I'm curious if you're willing to share, and it's okay to say no, but about your experiences with your kids and what they had experienced and how you doing the inner work, how that impacted them. If you don't want to share, that's fine.
Yeah, I have
But
no problem sharing. Uh, I probably have had conversations with my oldest the most on this because I feel like he deserved a better version of me growing up, and I I'm very grateful to have learned and to have been able to do better and be better for him. But if I could have just been a little more healed in the beginning, like even a little bit, and not had so many of those elements from my own childhood, I feel like I would have done better by him. So I have had those conversations with him where I've sat with him and I have apologized to him for this. And he's a very loving child. So he's just, I'm grateful for you and I'm grateful for what we have. And while I'm appreciative and not, and let him know I'm not digging for compliments in this. This is not just for you. This is for your subconscious as well, of the parts of you that don't remember that I could have and should have been better for you and just didn't know better and didn't do better. So I think it's challenging, and I also think it is an element of bravery because you really have to look at yourself and be able to see these elements of you that need improvement, and kind of call yourself out on it. And I think I'm proud of myself for doing that. I was raised by people that didn't have that ability, and I think it really stunted them as not just parents but as human beings, and it kind of leaves one in victim mentality. Um, I chose not to be a victim, and I chose not to let my circumstances of my upbringing define me. Um, I feel that I became a better mother, and don't get me wrong, there's always room for improvement. We are human after all, but I'm really proud of where we're at, and the growth I've seen in my kids and the fact that they feel safe talking to me, that they feel safe having conversations with me. So just things like that for me are very important because I didn't have that. I couldn't have a conversation with any of my parents because one would have probably hit me and the other would have, accused me of being an ungrateful daughter or apologized for being a terrible mother. So it was a big shift for me.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Like I said, I have no idea what I bring people into. But I something just I felt, I don't know, I felt this pull to ask because I think, when our kids go through tricky things, what a beautiful gift that you gave to your oldest son to show him that you are human and that this is something that we're not going to let define us or create our path in the future. It's part of a lesson that we learned, and let's learn whatever lesson we were supposed to learn from that, and then let's move on and decide who we want to be and not let that kind of create who we are. So from a developmental perspective, from a trauma perspective, what a beautiful gift that you gave to him, because we can't control circumstances so much, and and our brains are wired to get stuck in those loops, and so you saying like you wish you would have made the decision sooner, but that's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to break those patterns. And you did what you needed to do when you needed to do it. I have to trust that, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you point that out too, because it also helps me as I continue to move forward in this that one, I'm a cycle breaker, but to really break a cycle, it really helps to have that next generation breaking it with you and kind of solidifying that we've made change, we've created this shift, and we will continue to do so.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love that. In one of the things, I won't dig too much into human design, but there are two things that popped up that I want to share. It is like my life's work is about seeing patterns that need to be broken and helping people to break them. So that cycle breaker, I believe that it is probably in your design as well, because I can sense that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's part of my work because I work with old souls, and old souls are cycle breakers.
Yeah.
Many have come back in this lifetime to break cycles.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the other thing that was popping out for me as you were talking is that, so through the when we look at life, like you were saying, we could look at life in so many different ways through astrology and the zodiacs and human design, and through the lens of human design, um, we have been in for the past 400 years this energy of like systems and structures and trusting outside authority. And so much of what you describe about your upbringing was about like the parents are right, the parents are in control. But in 2027, we already energetically, we've already been moving into it, but the actual shift happens in 2027, where we're moving into this individual empowerment
Yes.
phase and energy that will be in. Our kids won't know any different because it will be for the next 400 years. And that gift that you gave to your son to not only share, like, I didn't know then what I know now, and I stepped into me, and I want you to step into you, because we know what's better for us than any outside authority. And so giving that gift to your son and breaking that cycle, setting him on a trajectory that it could have been so different for him. So that's just so beautiful.
Yeah, it's been an interesting run. His path was meant to be incredibly different, and I'm grateful I reached a point of recognizing that and allowing him to walk his path. And I just was there to really support and love him in the best way I could.
Yeah, very cool. So thinking about the listeners, and I know that they will resonate with so many parts of your story. I'm curious if you have any practical tips or anything that, maybe if they are stuck in their own patterns or not really knowing how to really step into themselves, if you have any tips for them about where to start or what to do to really start trusting themselves.
What I like to do for my clients is help them understand their trauma responses. So, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, because these are based on any kind of adaptive behaviors we have created to, you know, basically grow and evolve in our own childhoods. And when we adapt to certain trauma responses, then our energy becomes locked into that, and our nervous systems are hardwired to respond in those situations that have similar energy. So it's when we recognize the trauma response first and foremost, and usually we have one major one and then kind of like a backup one. So when we recognize those and we recognize that those are our patterns of behavior, that's kind of the first step is just like, oh wow, this is what I'm doing. I'm having a trauma response. And then it's learning how to calm your nervous system, how to teach your body it's safe, that it is no longer in that environment that you need to survive from, that you are able to work through this and feel it because we're taught also to stifle emotion. So a lot of times this is why energy gets stuck in the body is because we're not taught how to process energy, how to feel, to allow it to flow through because we instead will have some situation come up that is in some way it doesn't really matter the layer of trauma, but what we do as most humans, because it's just kind of how we're taught, we lock down. And what we're ultimately doing is locking that energy inside the chakra system. And that is why these traumas then develop over time and then ultimately manifest within the body. But when we can allow these things when they come to process it, and that's kind of long-term kind of healing stuff. But like I said, first and foremost, start recognizing your trauma response. Secondly, start working on somatic type of practices to allow things to shift in your body by calming it and nervous system calming techniques.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great and so aligned with what what I do in my work too and helping clients, right? Is we have to let that old stuff go.
Yeah.
And so I use tapping, but there are other modalities out there. It sounds like you use tapping as well. So what a great practical way to figure out where to start because at the end of the day, right, when we're raising kids who have a tricky past or have challenging behaviors, we ourselves must be regulated first
100%.
before we're capable of helping them, quite frankly.
I agree.
Yeah, very cool. Any last thoughts that you wanted to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I like to tell people is that if they're trying to make these kinds of changes, it needs to be gradual because energy has a rubber band effect. So if we try and yank it too quickly, it's going to snap right back. Where slowly over time, as we shift it, you can create more of that expansion where your energy adjusts and adapts. So if you are like me and you want to heal yesterday, I fully understand, but it just doesn't quite work that way for the long-term results. So just give yourself grace in the process of your healing journey.
Yeah, that's great. Great reminder, great advice. So where can listeners connect with you? Yeah, tell them how to find you.
Yeah, my website is probably the easiest way to find me. It's my name, chriswasko.com, and pretty much everything about me is there.
Perfect. Yeah, and we'll have that in the show notes so listeners can just click on it. Anything else that you want to share as we wrap up here?
Yes, I do like to share. I do have a book out in the world. It is called
Fun.
An Old Soul's Journey. And it looks and reads like a children's book, but which children do love because they like to find the white rabbit hidden in the pages. But it's mostly geared toward inner child healing.
Oh, that's lovely. I love that so much. So I'll have to check that out too.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for hanging out on Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. I trust that the listeners will love what you had to share. And yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your energy.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was great.